He pointed the gun at my chest and said, "You're going to disappear, and no one will come looking for you." I had 10 seconds to live. My 7-year-old nephew was home alone, and the only man who could save me was the most dangerous man in Naples, a man I was falling in love with. My name is Elena, and this is the story of how I escaped a monster, only to be claimed by one far more powerful. But here's what I never expected. The killer with blood on his hands was the first person who ever made me feel safe. Before we begin, this story carries a powerful lesson. Sometimes the people society labels as monsters are the ones who protect us, and the ones who say, "I love you," are the ones who destroy us. Never judge your salvation by its packaging. If that message speaks to you, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so you never miss a story that could change the way you see the world. Now let me take you back to the night everything began. I punished the last table with my cleaning cloth. The marble shone under the low restaurant lights. A reflection looked back at me, a woman with tired eyes, her hair pulled back far too tight. A pale purple bruise bloomed under her left cheek, a shadow that makeup could no longer conceal. The kitchen crew had clocked out an hour before. Now the dining room was silent, haunted by the lingering scent of wine and expensive cologne. My phone vibrated. 3 missed calls from the school, a text from my landlord demanding the rent, and one message I refused to open because my heart already knew the words inside. "Where are you? We have to talk." A knot formed in my stomach. I deleted it, unread. After wiping down the bar, I grabbed my coat from a hook by the kitchen. It smelled of garlic and old dishwater, but I put it on. The streets were not safe this late. I had to get home to Luca. The rear door opened into a dark, narrow alley filled with dumpsters and stacks of broken pallets. I always used the front, but the manager had locked it early tonight. I shoved the door open and the cold air bit my skin. I stepped into the darkness and pulled my coat tighter around me. A figure moved by the dumpster. My heart stopped. "There you are." Marco stepped from the shadows into the glow of a distant street lamp. His face was a mask of fury. He wore the same leather jacket from the night I ran, the night he cracked my ribs. I stumbled back a step. My fingers brushed against the door handle, but it was locked from the outside. "I have been waiting," Marco said. "Did you really think you could just ignore me?" "I have nothing left to say to you." My voice sounded surprisingly firm. "You owe me," he said, moving toward me. 2,000 euros. Do you remember? I paid you back already." I watched his hands carefully. His hands were always his first weapon. "You paid half," he sneered, closing the distance between us. "I want the rest. I do not have it." "Well, then we have a problem." My back hit the cold brick wall. There was nowhere left to run. My phone was in my pocket, but my body refused to move. "Marco, please," I begged. "I have to take care of Luca." "You should have thought of that before you left," he said, reaching for my arm. I twisted away, but his fingers clamped around my wrist. A sharp pain shot up to my elbow. "Let me go, not until we are finished." I tore my arm away, my wrist pulled free. I lunged for the door again, but he caught the back of my coat. I fell forward. My knee slammed into the pavement, sending a shock of pain through my entire leg. "Get up," Marco commanded. "We are going to have a talk." I pushed myself to my feet. Blood trickled down my shin. I hobbled to the door, pounding on it with both hands. "Help! Someone please help me!" The door remained shut. The restaurant was deserted. No one was coming. Marco's hand wrapped around my throat. It was not tight enough to stop my breathing. It was tight enough to steal my hope. "You are making this much harder than it needs to be." I clawed at his hand. My vision started to swim. I could not think. I could not breathe. And then the door flew open. A bright light flooded the alley. A man in a clean white chef's uniform stood in the doorway. His eyes grew wide. "What is going on out here?" the chef demanded. Marco let go. I collapsed against the wall, fighting for air. "This is none of your business," Marco snarled. She is with me. The chef's eyes met mine. Elena, get inside now. I did not hesitate. I scrambled past him and into the safety of the kitchen. My legs trembled so violently I could hardly stand. I heard angry, low voices behind me. Then the door slammed shut. I leaned against a steel counter. My throat felt raw. My wrist was on fire. I wanted to break down and cry, but I could not. Not in this place. The chef returned. Are you hurt? I just nodded. I was not hurt. I was broken. Who was that man? He asked. He is nobody, I lied, forcing myself to stand straight. Just an old acquaintance. He was hurting you. I am fine now, thank you. The chef looked doubtful. You need to tell someone. Call the police. Or tell Mr. Duca. My entire body tensed at the sound of that name. Vincenzo Duca owned this restaurant. He owned half of this city. Everyone knew what he was. I can handle my own problems, I said. Are you sure? He asked. I did not give him an answer. I walked away, toward the staff room. My hands would not stop shaking. I sat on a bench inside for 20 minutes, waiting for my breathing to return to normal. I checked the new bruises blooming on my wrist, purple, marks from his fingers, a clear and ugly signature. I pulled my sleeve over them, stood up, and walked back into the dining room. But the room was no longer empty. A man was sitting in the corner booth. He wore a dark suit and had dark hair. He was watching me. His gaze was cold and steady, as if he were measuring my worth. I stopped breathing. Vincenzo Duca. I recognized him. He came here once a week, to the same booth. He always drank the same wine. He never spoke to the staff, only to his bodyguard. But tonight, the bodyguard was gone. I grabbed a cloth and began to wipe down a clean table. I kept my eyes low. I did not want him to see my face. I did not want him to ask me anything. Elena. His voice was quiet and controlled, but it cut through the silence like a knife. I stopped my work. Yes, sir. Come over here. My body obeyed before my mind could protest. I walked toward his table. Each step felt like it was weighed down with lead. I stopped a few feet from him. What can I do for you? Sit down. I am still on the clock. Sit. It was a command, not a suggestion. I sat in the chair opposite him. I folded my hands on my lap. I refused to meet his eyes. What happened out there? Vincenzo demanded. Nothing. Do not lie to me. My head finally lifted. His eyes were dark and intense. They missed nothing. I felt completely bare under his stare. It was just a misunderstanding, I murmured, with the man who put his hands on you. So he knew. Of course he knew. He likely knew every single thing that occurred in this building. The situation is resolved, I said. Is it really? I gave no reply. He settled back into his chair, resting one hand on the table. He had long fingers, with scars across the knuckles. There was no ring. Who is he? Vincenzo's voice was softer now. It was still cold, just less biting. My ex-boyfriend. And he is causing you trouble. This is not your concern. You work inside my establishment. He tapped the table a single time. That makes it my concern. I shook my head. I am capable of handling it myself. Are you? It was the same question the chef had asked. I was getting sick of it, yes. So why are you trembling? I glanced down. My hands were shaking in my lap. I squeezed them into tight fists. I am fine, I insisted. Are you? Thank you for the thought. I began to get up. His hand moved fast, not to grab me, but to block my way. Sit. I sat back down. He observed me for a long, silent moment. Then he took out his phone and typed a message. A minute later, a man in a black suit entered. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and a firearm was visible beneath his jacket. Rafa, Vincenzo said, drive Elena home. See that she gets inside without incident. I do not need anyone to walk me home, I said quickly. It was not an offer. Rafa simply nodded. Yes, boss. I looked back at Vincenzo. Why are you doing all this? Because I am able to. He stood, straightened his cuffs, and added, and because when you work for me, nobody touches you and gets away with it. There was a hard, final quality in his voice that sent a shiver down my back. What will you do? I asked. That will be up to him. He walked past my table and toward the main entrance. His steps echoed through the empty space. I just watched him go. My heart was hammering inside my chest. Rafa cleared his throat. Ready? I nodded. I retrieved my bag from the staff room and followed him out into the night. We drove through the city in complete silence. Rafa did not speak. He just kept his eyes on the road. I stared out the window at the dark streets of Naples. They looked different from this car. Dangerous, but beautiful. He stopped in front of my apartment building. It was an old, crumbling structure, the kind of place where landlords ignored problems and tenants minded their own business. Thank you, I said. Rafa did not answer. He waited until I was safely inside the main door before he drove off. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs. My legs burned. My wrist was a dull, throbbing ache. I unlocked my apartment door and went inside. Luca was asleep on our small sofa. A cartoon was playing on the television without any sound. Our neighbor, Mrs. Torres, must have put him to bed for me. I knelt down and brushed the hair from his forehead. He was so small. He was only 7, but his eyes held the weight of a lifetime. His eyelids fluttered. Elena, I am here, my love. I kissed his head. Go back to sleep. Are you okay? I am fine. He closed his eyes. Again. I pulled a blanket over him and went to the kitchen. Mrs. Torres had left a note on the table. He ate his dinner. Do not worry about payment tonight. You look exhausted. I crushed the paper in my hand. Everyone could see it. The fear, the weariness. I had no place left to hide. I drank a glass of water while leaning against the counter. My phone buzzed. It was another text. This is not over. It was from Marco. I deleted it and blocked his number. The gesture was useless, but for a second, it made me feel a little stronger. I finished the water and went into the bathroom. I switched on the light and faced my reflection. The bruise on my cheek was now a deep, angry purple. The marks on my wrist were dark and clear. I saw a woman shattered into pieces. I turned off the light and went to bed. Tomorrow had to be better. It was not better. The next morning, I woke to someone pounding on my door. It was loud and violent. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest. Elena, open this door. It was Marco's voice. I fumbled for my phone. My hands were shaking too hard to unlock it. I tried to dial. The authorities. The phone rang once, then twice. The front door burst open. I let out a scream. Luca jolted awake on the sofa. His eyes were wide with terror. Marco entered the room. His face was a mess of bruises. His lip was split, and one eye was swollen shut. Someone had hurt him. Someone had hurt him very badly. You called Duca, Marco growled. His voice was raw with anger. You actually went and called that monster. I did not call anyone. I got to my feet, placing myself between him and Luca. You have to go. Have you any idea what he did to me? Marco seized my arm. His grip was powerful. It hurt. Let me go. He had his men pull me into a dark alley. They beat me until I could no longer stand. And it was all your fault. I did not ask him to do that. You are his employee. Marco shoved me backward. I slammed against the wall. A sharp pain shot through my shoulder. Do you feel safe now? Do you believe he actually cares for you? Luca began to cry. His sobs were quiet and terrified. The sound shattered my heart. Please, I begged. Not here. Not with Luca watching. Then you are coming with me now. We can finish this outside. I am not going anywhere with you. His hand drifted toward his pants. I saw the firearm nestled there. It was small, black, and lethal. My breathing stopped. Come with me, Marco repeated, or I will force you. I looked over at Luca. He was a small ball on the couch, shaking without a sound. He had not said a word in months. Not after his mother passed away. Not after I was all he had left. Fine, I whispered. I will go. Good girl. He grabbed my arm, yanking me to the door. I glanced back at Luca one last time. Stay put, I shouted to him. Do not go anywhere. I will be back soon. The promise felt like poison on my tongue. Marco hauled me into the hall. He dragged me down the stairs. We went outside. The morning light was blinding. My eyes stung. He forced me into his car, slammed the door shut, and got behind the wheel. Where are you taking me? I asked. A place where we can have a talk. I did not believe a word. I reached for the handle. The door was locked. Marco turned the key in the ignition. If you try to escape, I will return for the boy. My entire body went cold. You will not touch him. Then stay quiet and do not move. I froze in my seat. My thoughts were racing. I had to escape. I had to return to Luca, but Marco was armed and I was helpless. We drove for about 10 minutes, winding through quiet streets past bakeries and shops that were just opening. I saw people walking by, living their normal lives. Not one of them looked our way. Marco steered the car into an alley behind a large warehouse. He killed the engine. Get out! I stayed put. He leaned over and pushed my door open. Now! I climbed out. My legs felt unsteady. I searched for a way to run. The only path out was blocked by Marco. You humiliated me, Marco said. He came around the front of the car. You made me look pathetic in front of everybody. I did not do anything. You went running to Duca like a coward. I did not run to anyone. My voice was trembling. I just needed you to stay away from me. It is too late for that. He drew the gun and aimed it at my heart. Everything stopped. Marco, please do not. You are going to vanish, Marco stated. And if Duca ever asks, people will just say you skipped town. Nobody is going to come looking for you. People will look for me. Luca needs me. Luca will be just fine. No, he will not. Tears streamed from my eyes. Please. He is only a child. He has already lost his mother. You cannot make him lose me, too. Something shifted in Marco's expression. It was not pity, just a moment of doubt. I took one step back, and then another. Stay where you are, Marco ordered. I spun around and bolted. A gunshot exploded through the air. I screamed. The round hit the wall next to me. Brick dust sprayed into the air. I choked but kept running. My shoes slammed against the asphalt. I could hear Marco right behind me, shouting curses. A second shot rang out. It felt much closer. I burst from the alley onto a busy street. Cars blared their horns and people stared. I did not stop running. I ran until my legs buckled. I collapsed onto the pavement, wheezing and trembling. My entire body ached. A sleek black car pulled up next to me. The window lowered. Vincenzo Duca stared out at me. His expression was calm and composed, but his eyes burned with an emotion I could not identify. Get in, he commanded. I did not hesitate. I just obeyed. I pulled the door open and scrambled inside. The car took off. I glanced back. Marco was standing at the alley entrance, watching us leave. His face was a mask of pure fury. Then he was gone. I turned forward. Vincenzo was next to me. He was not looking at me. He was focused on his phone, typing. Thank you, I managed to say. My voice was shaky. Where is the boy? Vincenzo asked. He is at home, in my apartment. Rafa, Vincenzo spoke to the driver. Send 2 of your men to her apartment building, 3rd floor. Retrieve the boy. Bring him to the villa. Wait, I interrupted. What? No, I have to go back there. Your ex-boyfriend just attempted to murder you. Vincenzo's tone was ice. You are not going back there. But Luca, he will be kept safe. He finally turned his gaze on me. You both will be, at my estate. I cannot. I shook my head. I cannot stay with you. I do not know you. Then you will get to know me. That is not how any of this works. It is how it works from now on. He put his phone away. You are employed by me. You are under my care now. That extends to the boy. I do not want your care. You are not being given a choice. I stared at him. His face was like stone, impossible to read. He was not making a request. He was issuing a command. I can handle things myself, I said. And how has that been going for you? The question landed like a punch. I looked away. My hands were covered in grime and scrapes. My wrist was still bruised. My life was completely unraveling. Fine, I said in a small voice. But only for tonight, just until I can make another plan. We shall see. The vehicle turned onto a private road. Tall, dense trees flanked both sides, the kind that concealed things from view. We stopped at a massive iron gate. 2 guards stood watch. They saw Vincenzo and immediately opened it. The villa came into view. It was made of white stone, with tall windows, all set within manicured gardens. It seemed like something from a dream, not a real home. This is your house? I asked. Yes. It is enormous. It has to be. The car pulled up to the main entrance. Rafa opened my door. Vincenzo got out first. I exited slowly after him. A woman appeared in the doorway. She was older, with gray hair tied back, wearing a simple dress and an apron. Gianna. Vincenzo instructed, get 2 rooms ready. One for Elena and one for her nephew. He will be here soon. Gianna nodded. Her eyes were kind as she looked at me. Welcome. Thank you, I replied. Vincenzo strode inside. I trailed him through a grand entryway of marble. Everything shined. Priceless paintings hung on the walls. A vase of fresh flowers sat on a table. The air smelled clean, flawless. Your room is on the next floor, Vincenzo said. Gianna will take you. It has a private bathroom. There are clothes if you need them. If you require anything else, you only need to ask. Why are you doing all of this? I had to know. He stopped and turned to face me. He looked into my eyes for a long moment. Because when the people I loved needed help, no one was there for them, he said quietly. And I will not permit that to happen again. Before I could say anything, he walked down a long hall and disappeared. I stood alone in a house that belonged to a stranger, waiting for my nephew, and trying to understand how my life had turned into this. Gianna gently touched my arm. Come, child. I will show you to your room. I followed her up the stairs. My legs felt like lead. My mind felt blank. She opened a door to The bedroom Gianna shows me is beautiful, with soft blue walls and a large bed covered in crisp white linens. She points to a door. The bathroom is through there. I will bring you some towels and fresh clothes. Is there anything else? No, thank you. Gianna offers a small smile. Luca will arrive soon. You do not need to worry. She slips out, closing the door behind her. I sink onto the bed, but the mattress feels wrong, too soft after years of sleeping on a couch. The room is perfect, clean, and safe, which makes me start to cry. I cannot stop the tears. All the exhaustion and fear pour out of me. I press a hand to my mouth, desperate to be silent. Sometime later, I hear voices from downstairs, followed by a car door shutting and the sound of small feet. Wiping my eyes, I rush to the door and look down the hall. Luca is there, standing at the top of the stairs with his backpack on. His eyes are swollen and red. He has been crying too. Luca, I say, and he runs into my arms. I hold him as tight as I can. He says nothing. He never does, but his small hands grip me fiercely. We are okay, I whisper. We are safe. I do not know if I believe the words, but I say them for him. A shadow moves down the hallway, and I see Vincenzo watching us. His face gives nothing away. Our eyes lock, and for a split second, his expression changes. I see something soft, something human. Then it is gone. He turns and walks away without a word. I carry Luca back into the room and shut the door. We sit on the bed together. He leans into me, silent and trusting. Outside, the sun disappears behind the trees, and the villa falls silent. For the first time in years, I feel something besides fear. It is confusion, uncertainty, and a strange sense of security. I cannot decide if that is better or worse. The next morning, I wake up to absolute silence. No cars, no shouting, no distant sirens. I sit bolt upright, my heart hammering in my chest before I remember. I am in the villa. This is Vincenzo's home. Sunlight is pouring through the windows. The air smells clean, like lavender. I glance at the clock on the bedside table. It is 9 in the morning. I have not slept this late in years. I get out of bed and check the adjoining room. Luca is still sound asleep, his little body curled beneath the blankets. His face looks peaceful. I quietly close his door and go to the bathroom. A soft white robe hangs on the back of the door. I put it on and face the mirror. The bruise on my cheek is a dark purple now, with yellowing edges. The marks on my wrist have faded. I look exhausted, but I am alive. After splashing my face with water, I head downstairs. The kitchen is immense, with white marble and steel appliances. Gianna is at the stove. "Good morning," she says warmly. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you. Please sit. I will make breakfast." "You do not have to do that," Mr. Duca insists. She pulls a chair out for me at the island. I sit. My stomach aches with hunger. I have not eaten since yesterday. Gianna places a plate before me with eggs, bread, and sliced tomatoes, along with a small cup of coffee. "This is too much," I say. "Eat," she tells me with a smile. "You must regain your strength." I pick up a fork and taste the eggs. They are perfect. I eat slowly, savoring it. "Where is Mr. Duca?" I ask. "He had to leave early for business." "What kind of business?" Gianna does not reply. She turns back to her pot, and the message is clear. Do not ask questions. When I am finished, I take my plate to the sink. "Can I help?" "No, you are a guest here." "I do not want to be a guest. I want to help." "Then you should rest." Gianna takes the plate from me. "You have endured a great deal. Allow yourself to heal." I nod, but I feel restless and trapped, not tired. I need a plan. I begin to wander through the villa. Every room is more stunning than the last, filled with high ceilings and expensive furniture, all perfectly arranged. The luxury feels cold and empty. I find a study at the end of a long hallway with the door left open. I peek inside. The walls are covered in books. A large desk sits in the middle, papers spread across its surface. A picture frame is lying face down. I know I should not enter, but I cannot resist. I walk to the desk and lift the frame. A woman with beautiful dark hair and a brilliant smile looks up at me. A little girl of maybe 4 years old, with the same smile, sits in her lap. Vincenzo stands behind them, his hand on the woman's shoulder. He is smiling a genuine smile, not the cold mask I have seen. "What are you doing?" I spin around to see Vincenzo in the doorway, his face rigid with anger. "I am so sorry," I begin. "Do not touch that." He crosses the room in 3 long strides and snatches the frame from my hands. "This room is private. I did not mean to snoop." He places the frame back on the desk, face down. His jaw is set, and his hands are balled into fists. "Who are they?" I ask in a small voice. "No one." They did not look like no one. His eyes lock with mine, full of dark anger. "Get out." I hurry from the room, my heart racing. I go back to my bedroom and lean against the closed door, catching my breath. That woman and that little girl meant something to him, something profound, and they are gone. The day passes slowly. I stay with Luca in the room. We play games, and I read to him. He draws with the crayons Gianna brought for him. He is silent, as always, but he hums a little tune as he colors. It is the first real sound he has made in months. A knock at the door makes us both jump. Gianna peeks inside. "Dinner is ready," she announces. "Mr. Duca has requested you both join him. We can eat here," I say. "He insists," Gianna replies. "Of course he does." I help Luca clean up his crayons. We wash up and head downstairs. The dining room is enormous, with a long table set for 12 under a crystal chandelier. Vincenzo is already seated at the head of the table. He has changed into a black shirt and looks more relaxed, but his eyes are still guarded. "Sit," he commands. I choose a chair across from him, and Luca sits next to me, his eyes wide with wonder. Gianna serves us pasta that smells incredible, along with bread and a salad, then she quietly leaves. "Eat," Vincenzo says. I put some food on Luca's plate before serving myself. Vincenzo just watches us, his own plate untouched. The silence is heavy and awkward. I stare at my food. "How old is he?" Vincenzo asks suddenly. 7. He does not speak. "No." "Why not?" I put my fork down. He watched his mother die in a car accident 2 years ago. He has not said a word since. Vincenzo's expression remains neutral, but I see a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "I am sorry," he says. "It is not your fault." Still. We eat without speaking for a few minutes. Then Luca tugs my sleeve and points from Vincenzo to his untouched plate. "He wants to know if you are going to eat," I explain. Vincenzo looks at his full plate, then at my son. The corner of his mouth twitches into a tiny smile. "You are right," he says directly to Luca. "I should eat." He picks up his fork and takes a bite. Luca rewards him with a small, shy smile. My heart aches. I have not seen him smile in so long. "Do you like it here?" Vincenzo asks him. Luca nods. "Good." His gaze shifts to me. "You can stay as long as you need. We cannot stay here forever." "Why not? This is not our home." "It could be." I shake my head. "We do not belong here." "And where do you belong? In that apartment where your ex can find you? I will figure it out." "Will you?" His voice cuts sharply. "The man has a weapon. He tried to end your life. What stops him from trying again? If I go to the police, what can I say? That a man threatened me? They will file a report and do nothing. You know this. I do know. I have tried it. The police do not help unless you are already dead." "So what is your suggestion?" I ask. "You stay here. I will handle him." "Handle him how?" His eyes meet mine. They are cold and absolute. "My way." A shiver runs through me. I understand what he means. I know what he is. A man like him does not use words to solve problems. "I do not want anyone to get hurt because of me," I say. "You should have thought of that before you came here. I did not run to you. You brought me here. And now you are my responsibility. I am not your anything." The words are harsher than I meant. Vincenzo's jaw clenches. He puts down his fork. "You are right," he says softly. "You are not mine. But you are under my protection, which means I decide what happens. You cannot control my life. Watch me." I stand up so fast my chair screeches on the floor. "We are leaving." "No, you are not. You cannot force us to stay." "Actually, I can." He stands too. "There are guards at every door. You will not get past the main gate. So we are your prisoners? You are safe." "That is not the same thing. It is close enough." I take Luca's hand. "Come on, we are going back to our room." Luca looks up at me, confused and frightened. I hate causing him more pain, but I cannot stay here under this man's thumb. Vincenzo moves to block my way. "Sit down." "Move," I say. "Elena." His voice softens almost imperceptibly. "Please, sit. We can talk about this." There is nothing to talk about. There is everything to talk about. I want to force my way past him, but he is stronger, and I am so tired. Defeated, I return to my chair. Luca sits beside me, his eyes full of worry. Vincenzo sits down again. He sighs, running a hand through his hair. I am not trying to control you, he says. I am trying to keep you alive. Why do you care? The question hangs between us. He looks at me for a long moment, truly seeing me. Because I could not save them, he says at last. My wife. My daughter. I failed to save them. I will not let that happen again. I gasp. The photograph in his study. A woman and a little girl were dead. I had to ask, what happened? A car bomb, he said, his voice completely empty. It was meant for me. They were just in the wrong place. I was supposed to be there, but I was at a meeting. It was over by the time I got back. I am so sorry. Do not be sorry, he said. Just let me help you. I was speechless. This cold, brutal man was carrying a grief that felt just like my own. All right, I whispered. We can stay. For a little while. Thank you. Luca pulled on my sleeve. He pointed at Vincenzo, then at himself. He made a scribbling motion in the air. I think he wants to draw something for you, I explained. Vincenzo seemed taken aback. He wants to draw me? Luca nodded eagerly. Okay. Vincenzo's voice became softer, almost warm. I would like that very much. After we ate, Luca brought his crayons into the living room. Vincenzo sat down on the couch. Luca settled on the floor right in front of him. He drew with intense focus, his tongue sticking out. I watched them from the doorway. This was the man who made everyone tremble, the man who ordered men to be broken. And he was sitting perfectly still as a 7-year-old boy drew his portrait. After 20 minutes, Luca held up his masterpiece. It was a stick figure in a black suit, with dark hair and a tiny smile. That is very good, Vincenzo said. He accepted the drawing with great care. Thank you. Luca beamed with pride. He ran over and hugged my legs. I smoothed his hair down. Vincenzo got to his feet. He glanced at the drawing one more time, then looked at Luca. A brief, unguarded expression crossed his features. It was vulnerability. Good night, he said to both of us. Sleep well. He disappeared down the hall, still holding the picture. I took Luca upstairs and tucked him in. He was asleep almost instantly, worn out from the day. I went to my own room, but my mind would not shut down. A storm of questions gathered. What would happen tomorrow? Or next week? How long were we safe here? And why was Vincenzo doing any of this? I walked over to the window. Below, the garden was dark and quiet. Guards made their rounds along the wall, their eyes always scanning. A light flickered on in a room on the other side of the garden. It was Vincenzo's study. I could see his silhouette as he sat at his desk. The drawing Luca made was now pinned to the wall, next to a photo frame that was turned face down. He was just looking at it. My chest felt tight. This man was not just dangerous. He was broken, in the same way I was. That knowledge made everything feel so much more complicated. 3 days went by. We found a rhythm. I would have breakfast with Gianna. Luca would play outside in the garden. I found small things to do around the house to help. Vincenzo was gone for most of each day. When he came home, we would all have dinner together. Our conversations were always brief and cautious. On the 4th day, Gianna asked if I would help her with the laundry. I went with her to a small room near the kitchen. You do not have to, she told me. I just thought keeping busy might make you feel better. It does. Thank you. We folded linen side by side. The repetitive motion was calming. It felt good to be doing something useful. How long have you been with him? I asked her. 15 years. Did you know his wife? Gianna stopped folding for a moment. Yes, Sophia. She was a kind and beautiful woman. She loved him more than anything. What was she like? She was patient, strong. She could see the goodness in him when nobody else could. Gianna finished another sheet. After she died, He was never the same. He grew colder, more distant. He will not let anyone get close to him now. What about Isabella, his daughter? Gianna's voice grew soft. She was his entire world. He used to call her his light. When she was gone, that light went out completely. My throat closed up. I am so sorry. We all are. Gianna looked right at me. But you and Luca, you are different. The way he looks at you reminds me of how he used to look at them. That cannot be true. She offered a small smile. I have been here a long time. I can tell when things are changing. And believe me, something has changed. I did not know how to answer. I just kept folding the sheets, but her words echoed in my mind. Something has changed. That night, a scream from Luca's room woke me up. I ran to him. He was sitting straight up in bed, his eyes huge with terror as tears rolled down his cheeks. It is okay. I am right here. I sat on the bed and pulled him into a hug. It was only a bad dream. He shook his head and pointed a trembling finger at the window. I looked but saw only the dark shapes of trees. There is nothing out there, I promised him. You are safe. He was not convinced. He held on to me, his small body shaking. A soft knock came from the door before Vincenzo stepped inside. He had on a t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair a mess. He must have been sleeping. What is wrong? He asked. A nightmare. He crossed to the window and peered out, then drew the heavy curtains shut. There is nothing out there, Vincenzo said. Only my guards. They will not let anyone get close. Luca looked over at him, still frightened, but he was listening. Vincenzo sat down on the corner of the bed. Can I tell you a secret? Luca gave a small nod. When I was your age, I was also afraid of the dark. Vincenzo's voice was surprisingly gentle. My father told me the dark is not something to fear. It is just the world sleeping, and while it sleeps, men like me stand watch. We make sure no harm comes to anyone. Luca stared at him, his fear slowly fading. So if you feel scared in the night, just remember that I am awake. My men are awake. We are all watching over you. You are completely safe here. Luca's breathing began to even out. He wiped at his eyes. Then, he reached out and his small hand rested on Vincenzo's. Vincenzo went rigid. I thought for sure he would pull his hand away, but he did not move. He just sat there and let Luca hold on. Better? Vincenzo asked. Luca nodded. Good. Vincenzo stood up. Try to sleep now, both of you. He went to the door, but paused to look back. If he has another one, just come get me, he said. I will be up. And then he was gone. I laid down next to Luca. He curled into my side and fell asleep in minutes. But I was wide awake, thinking about what Vincenzo had said. The look in his eyes, the way he let a 7-year-old boy take his hand. This man was more than just broken. He was trying to heal himself, one tiny piece at a time, and we were somehow a part of it. The next day, Vincenzo was there for breakfast. He was usually gone long before we woke up, but this morning he was at the table with a newspaper and coffee. Good morning, I said. He glanced up. Morning, sit down. I poured myself some coffee while Luca climbed into the chair next to me. Gianna set down a plate of pastries and a bowl of fruit. I have something for you, Vincenzo said. He pushed a white envelope across the table toward me. I opened it. Inside was cash, a thick stack of it. It was more than I earned in 3 months. What is this for? I asked. It is for the shifts you missed at the restaurant. This is far too much. It is what you were owed, plus some extra for anything you might need. I cannot accept this. You already have. I slid the envelope back to him. I do not want your money. Then what is it you want? To feel safe without being indebted to anyone. You do not owe me anything. His tone was final. This is not a debt. Consider it a gift. I do not take gifts from men like you. Men like me? His eyes narrowed. What is that supposed to mean? You know exactly what it means. Say it. You are with the Mafia. The word felt heavy and dangerous as I said it. You hurt people for a living. You take whatever you want. You run everything. Is that what you believe? I asked. Is it not the truth? He put down his coffee cup and leaned back. Yes, it is true. I hurt those who deserve it. I take what belongs to me. And I control what I must. But I never harm the innocent, and I do not take from those who have nothing left. And what about me? He asked. Am I just something for you to control? No. His gaze locked with mine. You are here because you chose to be. You are free to leave whenever you wish. But out there, you are prey. In here, you are protected. That is the only difference. And if I leave, what happens then? Then I will ensure Marco never touches you or anyone else again. How? He gave no answer. He simply held my stare. The message was perfectly clear. I did not want to know the details. Luca reached for a pastry. Vincenzo moved the plate closer to him. The motion was small and natural, as if he had done it 100 times. He likes you, I said softly. He should not. Why is that? Because I am dangerous. Vincenzo looked at Luca. And dangerous men always break the things they care about. Should not be near children. You pose no threat to him. Not yet. The words just hung there, cold and absolute. But I saw the truth in his gaze. He was not afraid of harming Luca. He was terrified of letting him get close, terrified of losing someone else. You cannot protect anyone by pushing them away, I told him. He replied, Yes, I can. No, you cannot. I know, because I have tried. He offered no reply. He just drank his coffee. The talk was finished, but something had changed between us. A tiny crack had appeared in the wall he built around himself. It was small, but it was there. Later that day, Vincenzo asked Luca to join him in the music room. I followed them, staying quiet. I did not want to disturb them, but I had to see. A large grand piano sat in the middle of the room. It was black, shiny, and beautiful. Do you know what this is? Vincenzo asked Luca. Luca nodded. Would you like to play it? Luca looked over at me, and I gave a small nod. He walked toward the piano and touched the keys so gently. A single note echoed in the room. Vincenzo sat down on the bench next to him. Press any key you want to. There are no wrong notes here. Luca hit another key, and then one more. He created a melody that was random and clumsy, but also sweet. Vincenzo just watched him. A faint smile touched his lips. He reached out and played a chord, then a second one, adding to what Luca had started. They played together without saying a word. They were just listening, making something beautiful out of nothing. I stood in the doorway and watched. My eyes started to burn with tears. I had not seen Luca smile that much in years. And Vincenzo, he almost looked happy. The song finished. Luca looked up at him, his face shining. You are good, Vincenzo said. Would you like to learn how to play? Luca nodded with excitement. Then we will practice every day, if your aunt agrees. They both turned to look at me, waiting for my answer. Okay, I said, my voice breaking. That would be wonderful. Vincenzo's eyes met mine. I saw something soft there. Gratitude. Understanding. A connection. Then it vanished. He stood up. Tomorrow then, after breakfast. He walked right past me and left the room. I remained there trying to understand what just occurred. This man, this broken and dangerous man, was teaching my nephew how to play the piano. He was offering us safety and kindness. These were things I never thought I would find here. I had no idea how to react. I could not sleep that night. I walked down the stairs. The entire villa was dark, except for a single room. A sliver of light escaped from under the study door. I knew I should not go in, but my feet moved on their own. I knocked lightly on the door. Come in. I pushed the door open to see Vincenzo at his desk. He held a glass of whiskey. Papers were spread out everywhere. He looked completely exhausted. "Cannot sleep?" he asked me. "No. Welcome to the club." I walked inside and sat in the chair that faced his desk. The silence between us grew. "Why do you drink by yourself?" I asked. "Because no one else is awake." "I am awake." He looked at me then. He really looked at me. He poured another glass and slid it across the wooden desk. I picked it up and took a sip. The whiskey burned on its way down. It was warm and strong. "What is keeping you awake?" Vincenzo asked. "Everything. And you?" "The same. Is that helpful?" "What?" "Drinking. Alone." "Does it help you?" "No." He emptied his glass. "But it helps pass the time." I put my glass down. I leaned forward. "Can I ask you something?" "That depends. Why are you really helping us?" He did not answer me immediately. He just stared into the empty glass in his hand. "Because I see her in you," he finally said. "My wife Sophia, she was strong, brave, and stubborn. She refused help from anyone, even from me, and that is what got her killed." "That was not her fault, was it?" His voice was full of bitterness. "She was in that car because I failed to insist she stay home. I respected her independence, and that decision cost me everything. You cannot blame yourself for that." "Why not? Everybody else does." I did not know what to say. His pain felt too fresh, too real. "Luca loves the piano," I said softly, changing the topic. Vincenzo's expression softened. "He is a natural. You are good with him." "I am trying. It is obvious." "Is it?" He looked at me, his eyes tired and vulnerable. "Because it feels like I am failing at absolutely everything. You are not." I reached over the desk and touched his hand. "You are doing more for us than anyone has ever done. And Luca, he has not smiled like that in such a long time. You did that." Vincenzo looked down at where our hands were touching. He did not move his hand away. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not being scared of me." "Who said I am not scared?" "Are you?" I thought about his question. I really thought about it. "No, not anymore." The look on his face changed. He turned his hand over. His fingers wrapped around mine. They felt warm and strong. "You should be," he said. "Why?" "Because I am not a good man. I do not believe that. You do not know me. Then let me know you." The words came out before I could stop them. I heard Vincenzo's breath catch in his throat. His thumb brushed over my knuckles. It was a gentle, hesitant touch. "Elena." A loud crash echoed through the villa. Glass shattered. Alarms started blaring. Vincenzo let go of my hand. He stood and pulled a gun from a drawer in his desk. "Stay here," he ordered. "What is happening? Stay here, and lock the door." He ran out of the room. I heard shouting and the sound of running feet. More glass broke. My heart pounded in my chest. I ran up the stairs to Luca's room. He was sitting up in his bed, his eyes wide with terror. "Come here," I called out. "Now." He ran to me. I pulled him with me into my room and locked the door. We hid inside the bathroom. I held him tightly. Gunshots exploded outside. 3 of them. 4. Then there was only silence. The silence felt worse than the noise. Minutes crawled by. Each one felt longer than the last. Finally, I heard a knock on the door. "Elena." "It is me, Vincenzo." I opened the door. He was covered in blood. His shirt was ripped. There was a cut across his cheek. "Are you hurt?" I asked him. "It is not my blood." His eyes searched the room until they found Luca. "Are you both okay?" "Yes. What happened was Marco." Vincenzo's voice turned hard. "He sent his men. They are gone now. Gone. Dead." The word felt like a punch. Men were dead because of us. Because Marco refused to let us go. "This is my fault," I said. "No. Vincenzo grabbed my shoulders. This is his fault, not yours. People are dying. They were people who chose this life, people who came here to harm you. Do not blame yourself for what they chose. Luca started to cry. Silent tears rolled down his face. I went to him and held him close. Vincenzo watched us. His hands tightened into fists. A drop of blood fell to the floor. We cannot stay here, I said. You are right. What? We have to leave tonight. I own a place near the coast. Nobody knows it exists. We will be safe there. For how long? For as long as it takes. To do what? His eyes met mine. They were dark and final. To end this. The drive took 2 hours. Vincenzo drove without a word. His jaw was clenched. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The cut on his cheek was no longer bleeding, but it looked angry and raw. I sat in the back seat with Luca. He was curled up against me, nearly asleep. His small hand held onto my shirt. Another car followed close behind us. Inside were Rafa and 2 other men. They were armed and alert, scanning the road for any threats. The city slowly vanished. Buildings were replaced by trees, then open fields, then just darkness and stars. Where are we going? I asked in a quiet voice. Somewhere safe, Vincenzo replied. You said that about the villa. This place is different. How? Nobody knows about this house. Not even most of my men. I looked out the window. The scenery was changing again. There were hills and curves. I could smell salt in the air. The ocean? I asked. Yes. We drove on a road that followed the coast. The water was to our left. It was dark, endless, and beautiful under the moonlight. Finally, he turned onto a narrow driveway. Trees hid the entrance from the main road. The path wound for half a mile before opening into a clearing. A house stood on the edge of a cliff. It was made of stone and had 2 stories. It was simple but elegant. The windows faced the sea. The garden was overgrown but still charming. This was Sophia's. Vincenzo said she had bought it before we got married. She called it her escape. It was a place where she could think. It is beautiful. She thought so too. He parked the car near the front door. He got out and then opened my door. I carried Luca inside. The house was dark, but it was clean. Someone took care of it and kept it ready. Vincenzo switched on the lights. The inside was warm and cozy. It was nothing like the villa. This place felt like a home. Upstairs, Vincenzo said. There are 2 bedrooms. Take whichever one you want. I carried Luca up the stairs. The first bedroom had a view of the ocean. It had a large bed with blue blankets. I gently laid him down and pulled the covers over him. He was already asleep. I kissed his forehead and went back down the stairs. Vincenzo was in the kitchen pouring a glass of water. His shirt was still stained with blood. His hands were shaking just a little. You should get cleaned up, I said. In a minute. No, now. Before Luca wakes up and sees you like that. He looked down at himself and realized I was right. He put the glass down. There is a bathroom through there, he said. I am going to shower. He walked down a hallway and disappeared. I heard the sound of running water. I walked through the house, checking all the windows and locking the doors. It was a habit I had learned from always being on guard. Rafa knocked on the front door. I opened it. He gave me a single nod. We will patrol the perimeter, Rafa said. 4-hour shifts. Nobody will get close to this place. Thank you. Do not thank me. Just stay inside. He turned and left. I locked the door after him. I went back to the kitchen. I started to make coffee. My hands were shaking as I poured the water. Tonight could have ended so much worse. Marco's men had broken into the villa. They were armed. They came to hurt us. And Vincenzo stopped them with violence, with death. I should have been horrified. I should have been making a plan to leave, to disappear forever. But I was not. I was just exhausted and grateful and so confused. Vincenzo came back into the room. He had changed into clean clothes, a black t-shirt and gray pants. His hair was still wet. The cut on his cheek looked much better now that it was clean. Coffee? I asked him. Please. I poured a cup for him. He drank it black. No sugar and no milk, just bitter and strong. Thank you, he said. For what? For not running away. Most people would have run. Most people do not have a 7-year-old who depends on them. Still, I sat down across from him at the small kitchen table. The house was quiet. The only sound was the waves crashing on the shore outside. So what happens now? I asked him. We wait. Wait for what? For Marco to slip up. He will. Men like him always do. And when he does, I will end this. You mean you are going to kill him? Yes. The word just hung in the air between us. It was simple, final. He offered no excuse or apology. Does that bother you? Vincenzo asked. I am not sure. You should be sure. This is my nature. This is what I do. I know what you do. Do you? He leaned in closer. I kill people. I hurt them. I take what I want, and I ruin anyone who gets in my way. That is my life. That is my entire world. Is that the world you wanted? The question seemed to catch him by surprise. He sat back and stared into his coffee cup. No, he said at last. It was chosen for me. My father, and his father before him. My path was set long before I was ever born. But you chose to stay. Where would I have gone? Anywhere else? It is not that easy, is it? He looked up at me. His eyes were heavy with exhaustion and with sadness. You do not just walk away from this life. It follows you, it finds you, and it destroys everything you love. The way it destroyed Sophia and Isabella. He winces. My words found their mark. I see the hurt in his eyes, but I will not take them back. He agrees with me. He rises and walks to the window, looking out at the dark sea. I was responsible for their deaths, not directly, but because of my choices and my enemies. My entire life led to that explosion, and I could do nothing to stop it. I get up and stand behind him. I tell him he is not to blame. Everyone says that, but it is not true. Vincenzo's voice is heavy. He says Sophia wanted to leave 6 months before she died. She knew this life was too dangerous. She wanted to take Isabella and just disappear. His voice breaks. I refused. I told her I had responsibilities. I chose my men over my wife, and she died for it. My heart aches for him. You could not have known what would happen. Perhaps I should have listened, but the past is the past. He turns to me. I know, but I can at least check on Luca. I can change our future. I will protect you both, no matter the cost. I have lost everything before. I will not let history repeat itself. He looks deep into my eyes, searching for a sign of understanding. I lift my hand to his face. My fingers gently trace a cut on his cheek. I whisper that he is no longer alone. He covers my hand with his own. It is warm and strong. He shuts his eyes and leans into my touch. He whispers that I should fear him. I tell him I do not. He opens his eyes, their color deep and intense. For a moment, his guard is down, showing the broken man inside. We hear footsteps on the stairs. We quickly move apart. Luca stands in the doorway, his eyes swollen and red. He was crying. I open my arms and call to him. He runs into my embrace. I lift him up, holding him tight even though he is getting heavy. Vincenzo asks if it was another bad dream. Luca just nods. Vincenzo asks if we want to see something. He opens the back door and motions for us to follow. We walk through the garden to stone steps carved into the cliff. The path leads down to a secluded beach. Under the bright moon, the sand shines like silver. Gentle waves wash ashore. It is beautiful and calm. Vincenzo says Sophia came here when sleep would not come. The ocean made her worries feel small. The water carried them away. Luca squirms in my arms and I set him down. He runs to the shoreline and lets the waves touch his feet. He looks over his shoulder at us and smiles. I tell Vincenzo that Luca likes it. Vincenzo sits on a large rock to watch him play. He says this place was a gift from her. She believed even men like him deserved a place to rest. I tell him she sounded wise. His voice is quiet. He says she was. Too wise for a man like me. I do not think so. She loved you. That must mean something. Or it means she made a bad choice, he replies. You do not really think that. He does not respond. He continues watching Luca. The boy plays at the water's edge, his silent laughter infectious. I take a seat next to Vincenzo on the rock. Our shoulders are nearly touching. I feel the cool, salty air on my skin. I thank him. He asks why. I tell him it is for this moment, for keeping us safe, for showing he cares. He claims he is not doing anything important. I tell him he is wrong. He turns to me and his gaze softens. For a second, his tough exterior vanishes, and I see the real man. He tells me not to. I shake my head. I will not let him push me away. He insists he is trying to do what is right. I ask him what that is. He says it means staying away from me, to avoid pulling me into his dangerous life. I tell him it is already too late. He says it is never too late. But it is. I turn my body to face him. We are in this together now. I will not leave. He says I should. His jaw clenches. He looks at the sea, at Luca, anywhere except at me. He tells me I'm making this more difficult. Good, I reply. He pleads with me to stop pushing. He wants me to just feel. The problem is, I feel everything too deeply. My admission hangs in the air, surprising us both. He stands abruptly and walks over to Luca. I go with him. We stay on the beach for an hour. Luca gathers seashells while Vincenzo teaches him to skip stones across the water. I observe them, the deadly man and the quiet boy. They seem to belong together, like two damaged souls creating a fragile peace. At last, Luca starts to get sleepy. I carry him up the cliffside stairs. Vincenzo trails behind me, lost in his own thoughts. I tuck Luca into bed and he drifts off to sleep immediately. The ocean has calmed him. Later, I find Vincenzo in the living room by the fireplace. He is staring at the photographs on the mantel, pictures of Sophia and Isabella, an entire life captured in small frames. He speaks without looking at me. She would have approved of you. I ask how he can be sure. He says I remind him of her, strong, unyielding, and kind when the world is cruel. I deny it. He insists it is true, finally turning to face me. You had a chance to leave. I gave you money to go far away. But you stayed. You would not desert Luca. He calls that kindness. I call it survival. He shakes his head. No, it is love. The word hangs in the air between us. It is heavy and difficult. We do not know what to say. I tell him I should go to bed. He asks me to wait. I pause and turn around. Vincenzo walks toward me until he is standing very close. He looks deeply into my eyes. He tells me there is something I must understand. I ask him what it is. He says this thing between us cannot continue. I ask why. He says he brings ruin to everything he cares about. He will not let that happen to me. I tell him that is not his choice to make. He insists that it is. I step even closer to him. I am not Sophia. I am not Isabella. I am my own person, and I choose my own path. He asks if I would still choose it if it led to my death. His breath hitches. He raises a hand to my face, his thumb gently stroking my cheek. He whispers that I am impossible. I tell him he is impossible too. We stand in silence for a moment, just breathing. The rest of the world fades away, leaving only the two of us. Then he breaks the spell and steps back. His emotional shield is back up. He wishes me a good night. I walk up the stairs to my room. My heart is racing. The skin on my face tingles where his hand was. I lie awake, staring at the ceiling. Sleep is far away. I can hear him downstairs, pacing back and forth. He is as restless as I am. We are two haunted people, fighting a battle we do not understand. I wonder if it will unite us or destroy us. The next few days fall into a quiet routine. We eat breakfast as a group. Luca spends his time on the beach. Vincenzo gives him piano lessons. I prepare meals using Gianna's old recipes. Rafa's men are always on guard. The house is a fortress, a safe bubble from the world. But the world is still out there, and so is Marco. Then, one morning, the phone rings for Vincenzo. He goes outside for the call. He returns with a look of cold fury. I ask him what is wrong. He says Marco got in touch. He wants to make a deal. I ask what kind of deal. Marco wants me in exchange for peace. My blood runs cold. I ask what Vincenzo told him. He said he told Marco to go to hell. I protest, but his tone is harsh. He forbids me from ever going near that man. I argue that it could stop the fighting. He says it will not stop anything. Marco would kill me instantly. Vincenzo will not allow that. I ask what our plan is. We wait. Marco will act soon, and Vincenzo will be prepared. I ask how much time we have. Days, he says. Or maybe less. Fear grips me. I start to ask what will happen, but he cuts me off. He grabs me by the shoulders. He tells me not to worry, just to have faith in him. He promises to protect me. I tell him I trust him. He asks if I am sure. I say yes. His expression changes to one of shock, then comfort. He pulls me into a hug, holding me close. I can feel his heart beating fast. He whispers that he will not let me down. I close my eyes. For just a little while, I allow myself to believe him. Later that day, Luca and I are on the beach. The sun shines on the clear water. Luca discovers a small crab beneath a stone. His face fills with excitement. He gently shows it to me. I tell him it is lovely. He agrees and places the crab back down, watching it run off. I sit down in the sand, and he sits with me. We watch the ocean in peaceful silence. Then, he does something that surprises me. He takes my hand and gives it 3 short squeezes. I gasp. I recognize the signal. Sophia had shown it to me. It means I love you. I whisper back that I love him too. He rests against me, feeling safe and happy. We hear someone approaching. Vincenzo is walking toward us with his hands in his pockets. His face looks more relaxed than I have ever seen it. He asks if he can join us. Luca nods eagerly and pats the sand next to him. Vincenzo sits down. The 3 of us look out at the water. The moment feels delicate, like it could shatter at any time. My daughter loved the beach. Vincenzo speaks softly. She used to collect seashells and build sandcastles for hours. She thought the ocean was magical. Luca watches him, paying close attention. Vincenzo goes on. She was not wrong. The water makes you feel tiny, but also part of a larger world. I reach out and take Vincenzo's hand. He grips it tightly and does not let go. I tell him his daughter would have liked Luca. He says she would have adored him. Luca gets up and goes to the wet sand by the water. He uses a stick to draw something, focusing intently. When he is finished, he gestures for us to come see. We get up and walk to him. He has drawn 3 simple figures holding hands. There is a house behind them, and a sun in the sky. It is a family. My eyes fill with tears. Vincenzo's grip on my hand gets stronger. I ask Luca if the drawing is of us. He smiles and nods. Vincenzo gets down on one knee to be at Luca's level. He asks the boy if this is what he truly wants. A family. Luca nods again, this time with complete certainty. This time. Then I will do everything in my power to make sure that happens, Vincenzo said, his voice thick with emotion. I give you my word. Luca wrapped his arms around Vincenzo's neck and gave him a tight hug. Vincenzo went completely still. Then, very slowly, he hugged the boy back. I watched the 2 of them, 2 shattered souls finding a moment of peace together. Tears fell down my cheeks, and I did not bother to wipe them away. When they finally separated, Vincenzo stood and looked at me. His own eyes were glistening. Elena. A gunshot ripped through the quiet morning. The world shattered into a million pieces. Vincenzo threw me to the floor. I grabbed Luca and pulled him in tight against me. A second shot rang out. Then a third. "Stay down!" Vincenzo yelled. He drew a pistol from his waistband and began firing back. Rafa and his men stormed in, adding to the gunfire. It was shouting and pure chaos. I shielded Luca with my own body. He was trembling, crying without making a sound. I whispered into his ear that it was okay, that we were okay. The lies tasted like ash in my mouth. Then the shooting stopped. A dead silence fell over the room, far worse than the noise. Vincenzo appeared above me, blood streaming from his arm. "He has been hit. Are you injured?" he asked me. "No." "Luca." I quickly looked him over. There was no blood, no wounds, just pure terror. "He is fine," I said. "Good." Vincenzo helped me to my feet. "Get to the house now. Do not go near the windows. You are bleeding." "I am fine. Go." Rafa sprinted over. "Boss, we have 2 of them down. One got away. He went north." "Find him," Vincenzo ordered. His voice was frigid. "Absolute. And be certain he does not check in with anyone." "Yes, boss." I took hold of Vincenzo's uninjured arm. "You have to see a doctor. Later. Now." He looked at me. His eyes were hard, but then he nodded. "Fine. Inside." We hurried into the house. I sat him down at the kitchen table, found a medical kit, and cut his sleeve away. The bullet had grazed his arm. It was deep, but it would not kill him. My hands were shaking as I cleaned the injury. He did not even flinch. He made no sound at all. He just watched me. "I am so sorry," I said. "For what? For this? For all of it? If I had not—" "Stop!" He covered my hand with his. "This was not your fault. Marco chose his path. And now, I will choose mine." "What does that mean?" "He means this ends tonight." Fear shot through me. "You are going after him." "Yes, I want to come with you." "No, Vincenzo, you cannot." His hand tightened on my arm. "You will stay here with Luca. It is safe here. I am handling Marco. But what if he hurts you?" "He will not. You cannot know that." "I do." He stood up, flinching just a little. "I have been in this life for a long time. I always know how it ends. That is not comforting." A smile almost touched his lips. "Trust me. I do. That is what frightens me." He held my face in his hands, his thumb stroking my cheek. "I will be back. I promise." "Do not make a promise you cannot keep." "I always keep my promises." He leaned forward until our foreheads met. We just breathed, sharing the air in that fragile, terrifying moment. "Be careful," I whispered. "Always." And then he was gone, out into the dark, taking my hope with him. I bolted the door and went to check on Luca. The boy was shaking under his bed. I crawled in beside him and held him tightly. "Vincenzo will make this right." I promised him that Vincenzo would keep us safe. Luca just looked at me. His eyes held the question he could not speak. "What if he is not coming back?" "He will," I said, my voice firm. He made a promise. We waited under the bed in the crushing silence, praying. The hours dragged on. Each minute felt like a year. Then, headlights cut across the room. A car engine stopped, doors slammed, footsteps approached. I held my breath, my heart hammering in my chest. "Please, let it be him." Someone knocked. "Elena, it is me, Vincenzo." I scrambled from under the bed, rushed down the stairs, and threw open the door. He was standing there. He was alive, covered in blood, but alive. His eyes locked with mine. "It is done," he said. "Marco is dead." I did not think. I just acted. I launched myself into his arms. He caught me, holding me securely. We stood in the doorway, clinging to one another, breathing, living. "You came back," I whispered into his chest. "I told you I would. I was so afraid, I know." "I am sorry." I leaned back to see his face. "Are you hurt?" It is not serious. I promise. You promise. I touched his cheek, his neck, his shoulders, needing to confirm he was real and whole. His hands tangled in my hair. He just stared at me. His eyes were dark and intense, filled with something desperate and dangerous. Elena. He breathed out my name. Then his mouth was on mine. The kiss was everything at once. It was desperate and hungry. It was years of pain and loneliness poured into a single, overwhelming moment. His hands cupped my face as my fingers twisted in his shirt. We were two broken people colliding in a doorway, finally finding our other half. He tasted of smoke and salt. His lips were demanding and rough. I kissed him back with all my strength, pouring my fear and hope and need into it. When we finally broke apart, we were both gasping for air. He rested his forehead against mine. His eyes were closed. I should not have done that, he whispered. Yes, you should have. Elena, please do not. I pulled away slightly. Do not regret this. Not now. I am covered in blood. I do not care. You should. But I do not. He opened his eyes. His eyes are darker than I have ever seen. They are filled with desire and terror and something else I cannot name. He tells me this changes everything. I know it does. We cannot go back to the way things were. I do not want to. A muscle in his jaw clenches. His hands move down to my shoulders. He studies my face as if he is trying to memorize every feature, every line, every shadow. He speaks quietly, telling me to go upstairs and check on Luca. He says he needs to clean up. I ask Vincenzo for just a few minutes. I nod and walk up the stairs. My legs feel like they might give out. My entire body is shaking. I find Luca asleep under his bed, drained by fear. I lift him onto the mattress, cover him, and kiss his forehead. Then I go to my room and sit on the edge of the bed. I touch my lips. They still feel the heat from his kiss. He was right. Everything is different now. But I find that I do not care. I have spent years being cautious, living in fear and trying to avoid pain. It brought me nothing. Perhaps it is time to stop hiding. Maybe it is time to feel something genuine. I hear the sound of running water from downstairs. The shower. He is washing away the blood, cleansing himself of the violence, trying to become human again. I wait for him. My heart is a drum against my ribs. My thoughts are racing. What is next? Where do we go from here? I hear footsteps on the stairs, then a knock at my door. It is soft, almost uncertain. I tell him to come in. The door opens, and Vincenzo is standing there. He is wearing clean clothes and his hair is wet. The blood is gone, but his eyes still hold the memory of what he did. Is he all right? Vincenzo asks, talking about Luca. He is asleep. Good. A heavy, charged silence hangs between us. He stays in the doorway. I stay on the bed. I am sorry, he says at last. For what? For kissing you. For pulling you into all of this. For everything. I tell him to stop apologizing. He says he cannot. I get up and walk toward him until we are only inches apart. I am not sorry, I say, and I do not want you to be either. Elena, you need to listen to me. I press my hand against his chest. I can feel his heart pounding under my palm. I know who you are, and I know what you do. I am not a fool. I am not pretending this is some kind of fairy tale. Then what is it? It is real. I looked up into his eyes. This is real. It is messy and it is terrifying, but it is real. His hand covered mine, warm and strong. You deserve a better life. Maybe. But this is the life I want. You do not understand what you are saying. Yes, I do. I moved even closer. For 2 years, I did nothing but protect Luca. We were surviving, not living. You are the only person who has ever made me feel safe enough to feel anything at all. That is not a good enough reason. It is the only reason. My voice cracked. You make me feel alive. I feel scared and confused and alive. I refuse to go back to just existing. He inhaled sharply. His thumb moved over my knuckles. I am afraid I will hurt you. You probably will. People hurt each other. But I would rather be hurt by something real than be safe with nothing. He looked at me, searching my face for something. For permission, for hope. Then he kissed me again. This time, it was slower, deeper. His hands found my waist and pulled me flush against him. My arms went around his neck. I surrendered to the moment, to the feeling. We stumbled back until my legs hit the bed and we fell onto it together. His weight was a welcome pressure. I pulled him closer, needing more. His lips traveled from my mouth to my neck, along my jaw, to my shoulder. Every kiss was a brand, claiming a piece of me I did not know I was giving. "We should stop," he whispered against my skin. "We should, but I do not want to." "Then we will not." He pulled back to look at me, his eyes wild and vulnerable. "Are you certain?" "Yes, Elena, I am certain." He kissed me again, slower this time, so gentle, as if I might shatter. But I was done being fragile. We made love in the quiet darkness. His hands were careful, mapping every inch of me. I learned the history of his body through his scars. Each one was a testament to his survival. Afterward, we lay in a tangle of limbs. His arm was around me, my head on his chest. I could hear the steady beat of his heart. "I have not been with anyone since Sophia," he said into the darkness. "You do not need to explain. I want to." He took a deep breath. "After she died, I just could not. Every time I tried, all I could see was her face. I felt like I was betraying her. But now, I think she would want me to be happy. I think she would want me to live." I drew small circles on his chest. "She would." "How can you be so sure?" "Because she loved you. And love wants the people it touches to find happiness, even after it is gone." His arm tightened around me. "You are too good for this world." "No, I am just trying to make my way in it. You are doing more than that. So are you." We were quiet for a long time. The sound of the ocean drifted in through the open window. It felt peaceful, eternal, like the world outside our room was miles away. "What happens tomorrow?" I asked. "We return to the villa. We start over. Marco is gone. His people will scatter. We will be safe." "For how long?" "I do not know," he answered honestly. "In this life, you are never completely safe. There is always another threat, a new danger. But I will keep you safe, both of you, I have no doubt. Does the thought of that scare you?" "A little. It should." I lift my head to see his face. "Why?" "Because you will keep me grounded, keep me from losing myself. I need that." "Is that all I am to you? Your moral compass?" "No." He holds my face in his hands. "You are the piece of my life I never knew was missing." My breathing stops. "Vincenzo, I believe you. You and Luca brought purpose back to my world. You reminded me what I fight for. And what is that? For this. For us. For family." That word hangs in the space between us. It feels heavy, wonderful, and terrifying. "Family," I echo quietly. "If that is what you want, then it is what I want." He kisses me again, a gentle promise made without words. We drift to sleep in each other's arms, feeling safe, feeling home. The morning arrives too quickly. Sunlight streams into the room. I am the first to wake. Vincenzo's arm is still draped over me. His face looks peaceful in sleep, younger without his guarded expression. I slide from the bed quietly and get dressed. He remains asleep, wrapped in his blanket. His expression is serene. I head downstairs and make some coffee. I stand by the window, watching the ocean. The waves crash onto the shore, steady and relentless. Whatever chaos happens on the land, the sea is constant. I hear footsteps. Arms encircle my waist. Vincenzo pulls me into his chest and kisses my shoulder. "Good morning," he murmurs. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in a very long time." "The same for me." We stand there together, watching the water, sharing the quiet moment. Everything feels changed now. Lighter. Rafa plans to leave by noon, Vincenzo says, to get us to the villa before nightfall. Is that all right? Yes. Elena, I know what you are about to say. That last night changes nothing. That we have to remain cautious. That our lives are dangerous. In fact, I was going to say that last night changed absolutely everything. And I have no regrets. I turn in his embrace to look at him. Truly, truly. He touches my cheek. I have spent 5 years buried in guilt, pushing people away and building walls too high for anyone to climb. Then you and Luca appeared, and suddenly those walls seem pointless. What are you trying to tell me? I am telling you I want this. Us. I want to give this a chance. My chest feels tight. It is complicated, especially because it is complicated. He offers a genuine smile, the first one I have ever seen. Nothing worthwhile is ever easy. That sounds very philosophical. It was something Sophia always said. I suppose some of her wisdom stayed with me. I touch his cheek. She would be proud of you. I hope you are right. We kiss, a slow and deep connection. The entire world fades away, leaving just the two of us. Only this feeling exists. Luca's footsteps thunder down the stairs. We pull apart instantly. Vincenzo runs a hand through his hair. I smooth out my shirt. Luca runs into the room, then stops, glancing between us. His eyes hold a knowing wisdom that seems beyond his age. Good morning, Luca, Vincenzo says. Luca just smiles and gives a thumbs up. He then walks to the table, takes a seat, and waits for his breakfast. I glance at Vincenzo. He glances back at me. We share a laugh. The tension is gone. Everything feels normal and right. We have breakfast as a family, enjoying pancakes and fruit. Luca recounts his dreams with elaborate hand gestures. Vincenzo interprets for me. I add my own details. We are figuring out how to be a single unit, how to exist as one. After our meal, we begin to pack. Rafa pulls up with 2 vehicles. His men start loading our belongings. The house is cleaned and locked, left behind like a vivid memory. I take a final look at the beach and the ocean, this place where our lives were altered, where we became something more. Are you ready? Vincenzo asks. Yes. The drive back is silent but comfortable. Vincenzo keeps my hand in his. Luca is asleep in the back. Rafa focuses completely on the road, professional and discreet as always. We reach the villa in the afternoon. The main gates have been repaired. New guards stand watch. Everything appears the same, yet it feels different. I carry Luca inside. He stirs and wakes up as soon as we are through the door. He looks around, realizing where he is. A wave of relief washes over his face. This place is now his home. Gianna hurries out to meet us. She embraces Luca, then me. Her eyes then shift to Vincenzo. An unspoken understanding passes between them. A look of approval. Welcome home, she says. Her voice is full of warmth. Thank you, Gianna, Vincenzo replies. She hums happily as she returns to the kitchen. Vincenzo takes our luggage upstairs. I follow with Luca. We walk past the guest room where I first stayed. Vincenzo does not stop. He leads me further down the hall to another door. This is my room, he announces. Our room, if you want it to be. I look from the door to his face. Are you certain? I have never been more certain about anything. I simply nod. He opens the door. The room is spacious and modern, dominated by a large bed and windows that overlook the garden. It smells of him, a scent of cedar and soap. Luca's room is next door, Vincenzo explains. There is a connecting door so he can get to us if he needs anything. You have thought of everything. I want you both to feel secure here. I place Luca on the floor. He begins to explore, opening doors, peeking into closets, and testing the mattress. He gives another thumbs up. I think that is his approval, I say. Good. Vincenzo puts down the bags and comes over to me, taking my hands. Elena, there is something you need to know. What is it? This is not a temporary arrangement. I am not asking you to stay for a week or even a month. I am asking you to stay for good, to build a life here with me. My heart freezes. Vincenzo, I know this is sudden. I know it sounds insane, but I have already lost 5 years to fear and loneliness. I do not want to lose any more time. What about your life? Your enemies? I will deal with them as I always have. But now I will do it, knowing I have something to protect, someone to come home to. Tears well up in my eyes. I am speechless. Just say yes. It is not so simple. It is. He draws me closer. I am not looking for perfection. I am looking for something real, for us to face it together. I look over at Luca. He is watching us, listening intently. His eyes are filled with hope. He wants this just as much. A real home, a family, a safe place. I turn back to Vincenzo. This man saved us, protected us, and opened his heart when he had every reason to keep it locked away. Yes, I say. Yes, we will stay. A smile transforms his face. It is genuine and beautiful. He lifts me from the floor and spins me around. I laugh, a sound that feels unfamiliar after so long. Luca claps his hands in silent celebration. His smile is enormous. He is happy. He runs to us, and we pull him into a group hug, the three of us, together as a family. The weeks fly by. We settle into this new existence. Luca returns to school at a private academy near the villa. Vincenzo drives him there each morning and picks him up each afternoon. They discuss his day. Luca communicates with his hands. Vincenzo never pressures him to talk. He just listens. I help Gianna around the house, cooking and gardening. These simple, normal tasks feel strange at first, but I get used to them. Vincenzo's other life continues. Men visit the villa. Meetings take place behind closed doors. But he keeps that world separate from us. He never allows violence to enter our home. At night, we are just a family. We eat dinner together. Luca has piano lessons. We read before bed. Then, Vincenzo and I go to our room. We talk, we connect, and we build something that neither of us ever thought was possible. One evening, about 3 months after our arrival, everything changes. We are at the dinner table. Luca is telling a story with his hands. Vincenzo watches him with complete focus. I am smiling at their back and forth. Suddenly, Luca stops. His expression turns serious. He looks directly at Vincenzo. He opens his mouth. Papa. The word is quiet, raspy from disuse, but it is clear and undeniable. The world stops. Vincenzo's eyes widen. I hold my breath. Gianna drops a spoon. What did you just say? Vincenzo asks, his voice trembling. Papa, Luca says again, this time louder and with more confidence. Tears flood Vincenzo's eyes. He stands and walks around the table. He kneels down in front of Luca and takes his small hands. Say it one more time, Vincenzo whispers. Papa, you are my papa. Vincenzo wraps him in a tight hug, his shoulders shaking with emotion. He is weeping. This powerful, dangerous man is weeping. Yes, Vincenzo says, his voice cracking. Yes, I am your papa, and you are my son, my boy. I raise a hand to my mouth as tears stream down my cheeks. Gianna dabs at her eyes with her apron. The moment is overwhelming, beautiful, and perfect. Luca is speaking. After 2 years of silence, his first word was papa. Vincenzo pulls away to look at him, touching his face gently. How do you feel? Vincenzo asks. Happy. Luca's voice is soft, but clear. I feel happy. Me too, son. Me too. They embrace again. I get up and join them, wrapping my arms around them both. We all cry together. Tears of joy, tears of healing, the kind of tears that wash away all the pain and leave only hope behind. 6 months after we came to the villa, Vincenzo takes me back to the beach house, just us. Gianna agreed to watch Luca for the weekend. We needed this time alone. A chance to be just Elena and Vincenzo. Not parents or survivors, just two people. We get there as the sun is setting. The sky is a canvas of orange and pink. The water mirrors the brilliant colors. It is beautiful, serene, almost holy. Vincenzo takes my hand and leads me onto the beach. We walk at the edge of the water. The waves gently wash over our feet. The air smells of salt and new beginnings. Do you remember our first time here? Vincenzo asks. Yes. We were running for our lives, scared and broken. And now we are healing. Are we really? I stop walking and turn toward him. Yes, we are. You are not the same man who had me brought to him against my will. And I am not the same woman who was too terrified to resist. You were never too afraid. I was. But you helped me rediscover my own strength. You had it all along. He brushes my cheek with his hand. I just provided a safe place for you to find it again. We stand in the shallow water, holding one another. The sun disappears below the horizon. Darkness falls, but it no longer feels frightening. It feels peaceful. Peaceful. Elena, Vincenzo said, I need to ask you something. What is it? He reached into his pocket and took out a small box. My heart simply stopped. He opened it, revealing a perfect, simple, elegant ring. I am not a man who is good with words, he said. I am better with my actions. But I need to try. I need to tell you what you are to me. Vincenzo, just let me finish. He took a breath. You saved me. You and Luca walked into my life right when I had given up on it. I thought I was done feeling anything at all. You made me remember how to live, how to love, and how to hope again. Tears were streaming down my face. I did not do anything. You did everything. He removed the ring from the box. You gave me a reason to be a better man, to protect instead of destroy. You made me want to become the man you see when you look at me. I see a good man. I am not good, but I am trying to be, for you. He lowered himself to one knee in the wet sand. The waves washed over his shoes. Elena Rossi, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my days protecting you, loving you, and being your family? I could not find my voice. I could only nod as tears blurred my vision. He slid the ring onto my finger. Then he stood and kissed me, a kiss that was deep and long and perfect. When we finally separated, we were both crying and smiling. We were both whole. Is that a yes? He asked. Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He lifted me from the ground and spun me in a circle. I laughed, and the sound carried across the beach. It was a sound of freedom and joy. It was the sound of being alive. We made love right there on the sand, with the stars and the ocean as our witnesses. Everything felt perfect. Everything felt right. The wedding was small and quiet, with only family. Rafa and his men were there. Gianna stood with me, and Luca stood with Vincenzo. The priest we found knew not to ask any questions. We were in the villa garden, surrounded by trees and flowers. The priest spoke. We made our vows, simple words that held deep promises. I do, I said. I do, Vincenzo said. The priest smiled. You may now kiss your bride. Vincenzo pulls me into his arms and kisses me. It is soft and sweet, the start of forever. Everyone around us begins to clap. Luca cheers, his voice ringing out clear and strong. We have a small dinner celebration. Music is playing. Luca dances with Gianna. Later, Vincenzo and I dance together beneath the stars. We move slowly, holding each other close. It is perfect. Are you happy? I ask him. More than I ever believed I could be. Me too. Do you have any regrets? None at all. Not even about marrying a man like me? Especially about marrying a man like you. He smiles and kisses my forehead. We sway with the music, completely lost in each other, finally found in this single moment. Later that night, we are in bed. My head is on his chest, and his arm is wrapped around me. The moonlight catches the ring on my finger. Elena Duca, Vincenzo says. It sounds right on you. Does it? Yes. You were always supposed to be mine. And you were always supposed to be mine. Even when I was cold and cruel, he says. Especially then. You needed someone who could see past all of that. Someone who could see you. His arm holds me tighter. Thank you, he whispers. For what? For not giving up on me. For staying. For loving me through it all. It is not in spite of everything. It is because of it all. He turns his head and looks at me. His eyes are gentle, open, and completely vulnerable. I love you. I love you too. We fall asleep in each other's arms, feeling safe, whole, finally home. 6 months later, I wake up feeling sick. Vincenzo notices right away. He gets me a glass of water, holds my hair back, and asks if he should call a doctor. I am fine, I say. You do not look fine. I tell him it was probably something I ate, but it is not. I know deep down what is happening. I wait 3 days, and then I take the test. 2 lines show up. They are clear and definite and real. I am pregnant. I just sit on the bathroom floor, looking at the little plastic stick. Tears are rolling down my cheeks. They are tears of joy, of fear, of being completely overwhelmed. There is a knock on the door. Elena, are you all right? I open it. Vincenzo is standing there, his face filled with worry. I hold up the test and show him. His eyes widen. He stares at it, then at me, and then back to the test. Are you? I nod. Yes. He pulls me into an embrace, holding me so tightly I can hardly breathe. But I do not care. I hug him back just as hard. We just stand there in the bathroom, crying and laughing, overcome by this amazing gift. Another child, he whispers. A chance to do it right. You already do it right with Luca. But this time it will be from the very beginning. This time I will be there for all of it. I lean back to look at him. Are you happy, Elena? I am terrified and thrilled and so grateful and unbelievably happy that I can barely catch my breath. I laugh. Me too. He kneels, placing his hand on my stomach. It is still flat, but a new life is growing inside. Our life. Hello, little one, he says softly. I am your papa, and I promise to always protect you, to love you. I will be there for every moment. You are so wanted and so loved already. The tears start flowing down my face again. This beautiful, broken, and healing man. He is going to be a father again, and this time he will get to experience everything. We tell Luca that evening at dinner. Vincenzo and I sit him down and hold his hands. We have something we need to tell you, I say. What is it? Luca asks. His voice is much stronger now, full of confidence. You are going to be a big brother. His eyes go wide with surprise. Really? Is it real? Vincenzo says. There is a baby growing inside Elena's belly. Your new little brother or sister. Luca throws his arms around me and gives me a tight hug. Then he hugs Vincenzo. His smile is so big it almost covers his entire face. I am going to be the best big brother, Luca declares. I know you will be, Vincenzo says, the very best. That night, after Luca is in bed, Vincenzo and I sit on our balcony and look up at the stars. His hand is resting on my stomach, both protective and loving. I never believed I would have this again, he says. A family, more children, love. But you have it, I say, because of you, because of us. He kisses me, a soft and deep kiss that is full of promise. Our future stretches out in front of us. It is unknown and uncertain, but we will face it together, always together. 9 months later, on a warm spring morning, our daughter is born. She is small and perfect, with dark hair and her father's eyes. We name her Sophia Isabella, after the 2 who came before, the 2 who brought us together. In the hospital, Vincenzo holds her and just stares, his gaze filled with wonder, fear, and a love that is overwhelming. Tears roll down his face. She is perfect, he whispers. She is. Sophia would have loved her. She does love her, from wherever she is now. He looks at me. Thank you. For what? For giving me this. For giving me all of this. You gave me everything first. We sit quietly together, our daughter sleeping between us. Our family is now complete. The pain from the past never really goes away, but it changes. It becomes something you can live with, something that reminds you of how precious every moment is. Luca comes to visit later that day. He holds his new sister so carefully and speaks to her in a soft voice, telling her about the family she was just born into, about all the love that is waiting for her. I will protect you, Luca promises, always. Vincenzo's hand finds mine, and he gives it 3 squeezes. I love you. I squeeze his hand back. I love you too. We bring Sophia home to the villa. Gianna has decorated the nursery perfectly. The nursery was a sanctuary of pink and white, a world away from our past. I found Vincenzo there late, watching our daughter Sophia sleep. His hand on the crib was a silent vow of protection. He admitted his fear that this was all a dream, that he would wake and find her gone. I went to him, holding him from behind. We deserved this, I told him. We had earned our happiness. He turned and pulled me close, telling me he loved me. I said it back. He was still a dangerous, broken man, he confessed. I knew. But he belonged to me, and I to him. That was the only truth. His soft kiss promised forever. It promised home. We stood together, watching our child sleep. The guards made their rounds as the world moved on. Years went by. Sophia grew into a girl, and Luca became a strong young man who watched over his sister. Vincenzo's business became legitimate, a break from the world we once knew. The violence faded but never vanished. It was part of our story, but he shielded us from it. For Sophia's 5th birthday, our garden filled with celebration. She and Luca chased each other across the grass, completely safe. I watched until Vincenzo wrapped his arms around me. We made that, he said, pointing to our children. We built this life. I turned to look at him, still handsome, with new lines by his eyes and silver at his temples. Elena's story reminds us that survival is not about being fearless. It is about choosing to keep going even when everything inside you is screaming to give up. The people who hurt us do not define us. The scars they leave behind become proof that we are stronger than anything life throws at us. And sometimes, love does not arrive the way we expect. It comes wrapped in danger, in darkness, in the most unlikely places, but when it is real, it changes everything. His eyes, however, were the same, dark, intense, and full of love. I was more than happy. I was home. He felt the same. We watched our beautiful, messy life continue. I asked if he thought about the night with Marco. Every day, he replied. His only regret was my pain. But we survived, and that is what mattered. He kissed my temple. Sophia ran up, pulling us toward the party. We are coming, I promised. Vincenzo took my hand, and we walked into the garden to join our family. The setting sun bathed the villa in gold. Our eyes met. No words were needed, only understanding and love. He had told me to come to him. I did, and I never left. We were finally home. If Elena's journey touched your heart, leave a comment below and tell me, have you ever found strength in the most unexpected place? Your story matters, and this community is here to listen. Hit that like button if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you stories that remind you just how powerful you really are. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful lessons and inspiration to our audience. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.